BBC News with Sue Montgomery. A US fighter jet has shot down another unidentified flying object in North American airspace. It's the third in 3 days and was brought down over Lake Huron in Michigan, close to the US border. In a Pentagon news conference, the US Assistant Secretary of Defense said officials had not yet been able to definitely assess what the objects were and so had acted out of an abundance of caution. Peter Bowes has more details.
The Pentagon says the latest object was first detected on Saturday as a radar anomaly over Montana, but nothing unusual was found when fighter jets were sent to investigate. Officials said given that it had passed close to sensitive defence sites, a decision was taken to deploy an F-16 fighter jet to shoot it down. It had been considered to be a hazard to civil aviation. The location was deemed to be safe enough to avoid endangering people on the ground while improving chances for debris to be recovered.
More than 33,000 people are now confirmed to have died in the earthquakes that struck Turkey and Syria. The number keeps rising as bodies are recovered from ruined buildings. Rescuers are still finding more survivors 6 days after the disaster. Caroline Davis is in the Turkish town of Adana.
Many people are still living in the cold. They have no permanent accommodation, they have no running water, they have no electricity. According to the UN, more than 800,000 people still don't have access to adequate meals. It might be a week on, but the situation is still obviously not resolved. It is potentially going to continue and more people are going to be in very, very difficult circumstances. Hundreds of buildings have collapsed during the earthquake, and that has raised questions about whether or not these buildings were made safe given that they were in an area that was known to be hit by earthquakes.
The Israeli President Isaac Herzog has warned that the country is on the verge of constitutional and social collapse. His comments come as a political crisis intensifies over the government's plans to overhaul the judiciary. Here's Sebastian Usher.
This was a dramatic and unscheduled intervention by President Herzog ahead of a week that's likely to see deeper political turmoil in Israel. In an address to the nation, he called for the madness to stop and a compromise to be reached. But it may be too late. Anti-government protesters have called for a general strike on Monday, as the first vote in the Knesset on the government's plans is due to be held. For the past 6 weeks, tens of thousands of Israelis have taken part in rallies each Saturday, denouncing the proposals as an attack on the country's democracy.
The Israeli government has approved 9 Jewish settlements in the occupied West Bank, which were previously illegal outposts. The first such move by the new government of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It also announced the construction of new homes there. BBC News. The first results from the rerun elections in Berlin show the opposition Christian Democrats making big gains. They're almost certain to emerge as the German capital's largest party for the first time in more than 20 years, while the Social Democrats appear to be heading for their worst result since the Second World War. However, the governing left-green coalition is likely to retain its majority. About 250,000 people turned out in the centre of the Spanish capital, Madrid, to protest at the regional government's management of healthcare. The region's doctors have been striking since November, warning that health infrastructure is on the verge of collapse. Reports are coming in from the north of Burkina Faso of an attack in which at least 12 civilians have been killed. Locals in Kasai province told the French news agency that armed men and motorbikes stormed the village of Sanakodougou early on Friday. It's thought the assailants were members of an Islamist insurgency. Tens of millions of people in the US are glued to their television sets, watching the biggest event in the country's sporting calendar, the Super Bowl. The finale to the National Football League season sees the Kansas City Chiefs face the Philadelphia Eagles in Phoenix, Arizona. The BBC's Nesta McGregor is at the stadium.
I've covered sporting events all over the world, very few compared to this one. We've had a carnival, if not music festival atmosphere. Already a game that's going to go down in history because for the first time we have black quarterbacks leading out each team. We also have opposing brothers, Travis and Jason Kelce, on opposite teams. Really, really fiery. I tell you what, I spoke to 2 people who really stuck in my mind. Husband and wife, they've been married for 20 years. One is from Kansas City, the other from Philadelphia. They said today has been the toughest test of that 20-year marriage.
BBC News.